Welcome to the program, Jeff Lemire.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Of course, Essex County, um, a graphic novel series that it's been around for a while, critical acclaim, commercial success. People have really enjoyed this very down home story of events happening in Essex County. And of course, now it is being turned into a limited series, which is coming to CBC Gem on March 19th and CBC on March 19th. So when you first started writing this story, did you ever think it would transfer into other mediums?
Oh, geez, no. I think back then I was just starting out as a comics creator, and really my sole focus was just trying to get my work out as a comics creator and be published. I never even thought that would happen, let alone other things. So back then I didn't even have a publisher. I didn't think I'd ever make a career doing comics. It was just really doing it for the passion of doing it. And so yeah, I couldn't have imagined that it would have had the life that it has had as a book, and then now the chance to adapt it myself as a television series as well. That kind of stuff was beyond my wildest dreams, I think, back then.
When you like to that point, then like when did you start to realize that the books had that connection with the audience? Like because obviously as a comic creator, you're at home, you're writing, you're drawing, you're doing all those things. It's not like a live performance, or you're not face to face, like, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when did you start to really notice the reaction and the love for the work?
Um, yeah, it was pretty weird. I had spent a good I think Essex County was published, the first volume of it originally was published 2006, 2007, but I had really started trying to do comics seriously around 99, 2000. So I spent a good 5 or 6 years doing a lot of comics on my own. And like you said, not getting any feedback really from anyone. I was kind of doing it in a vacuum, and I don't know what really kept me going, to be honest. I'm some kind of insane I guess desire just to create. But it wasn't until I did Essex that I kind of felt like I'd found my voice as a writer and as an artist. And that was the first book I really submitted to publishers. And when Top Shelf agreed to publish it, that was sort of the first step of me kind of getting some validation of, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, there's some value in what I've been doing. So that was nice. And then for such a quiet story, sort of so specific to where I grew up, it suddenly kind of took on a life of its own, and became an independent hit in the States and everywhere else. And it kind of took me by surprise. But it became obvious within like the first year of publication that the book was successful and people were responding to it. And um, which was really gratifying, obviously, and kind of gave me the confidence to keep producing new work. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people connect with anybody who's had like even like a passing connection with the rural life, living in a rural community. They can really feel a familiarity with the piece. Of course, for you, you grew up in Essex County. You know, at that time, you're picking up comic books at gas stations,
Yeah.
convenience stores, newsstands. Was there a particular place in Essex County that had the best selection of comics?
uh it was kind of hit and miss. You'd have to really like, I knew all the spots, and you'd have to get there and kind of scrounge. But yeah, it was mostly just like local mini marts or gas stations that you could get stuff. And it was kind of just, you kind of took whatever they had, like you couldn't really be picky and look for the next issue of something, because you just sort of had to take whatever they happen to have that month. And which was kind of cool, because it was sort of I just read everything I could get my hands on. Any Marvel or DC book that was out, I would just buy. So yeah, there wasn't really one hot spot. It was more like hitting all the local little spots and trying to find something new. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that you'd have to go. Like, I remember when I was a kid having to go to different
Yeah.
stores and everything like that.
Yeah, I do
Basically, that would be
remember.
like you set a day, and you'd be like trying to hit all of them, get all the
Yeah,
good
you'd know
books.
which day like the new stuff usually would come out. So you'd try to get there and be all excited. But I remember there was a couple series where I actually was trying to get every issue, and there would be a lot of driving around with my mom trying to find it at different different convenience stores, which was
Yeah.
kind of fun, you know.
Yeah, I remember getting the bagged comics like that would be prepackaged. You get two, like one on each, and then
Oh
one
yeah, I
with
love those things.
covers
Yeah,
facing each side, but it was never related. Like like
yeah.
you'd get like an FF reprint, and then like
Yeah.
Captain Marvel or something.
Yeah,
Like it's
you
just
know,
so.
just kind of like look, try to push them to see what the middle book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. The middle book was always a mystery until you open it up and be like, ah, Micronauts, damn it.
Right.
But
Hey, it was always a mystery, right? But it was something I noticed in the first one. Like the when Les is getting the books and he's picking up Flash and there's some Batman and stuff. Was the Flash like a first book for you, or was there any other
There's
significant?
definitely DC stuff more. I don't know why. I always gravitated more towards DC stuff, you know, as a kid. I'm not sure why, but I think the first ones I can remember were actually you guys probably remember these two, the Blue Ribbon Digest. Remember those? They were like small digest size reprints
oh
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
supermarkets. They had Archie stuff. They still, I
Yeah.
think they still kind of do them for Archie, but back then DC was doing them. So DC had like their DC Blue Ribbon, and I remember getting there were like a lot of Superman ones or like Justice Society ones that would reprint like old Silver Age stuff, which I didn't even realize at the time were reprints. You know, I just
Yeah.
Superman comic. But so yeah, I really remember falling into that stuff, and then yeah, it would be like whatever monthly DC books you could get your hands on, what Flash, Green Lantern, whatever. You know,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
went through that with Classic X-Men when they did those reprints as Classic
yeah,
X-Men,
those were cool.
and I did not
Yeah.
realize that they were reprints of from like
Yeah.
25 or years earlier, and I was like, okay.
There you go. Oh. Now, of course, when you started drawing Essex County, you'd been living in Toronto for a while, and I remember you saying that the first drawing that came to you for this book was just drawing Lester. You drew him
Yeah,
over and over
yeah.
again, sitting there, little kid with the mask and everything. When you were drawing that, were you like sitting there thinking like, who is this kid? What do I want to say about him? Or is it just like, oh, I like this art. I want to keep drawing this character.
No, yeah, I think the same thing kind of happened with Sweet Tooth, where this kid sort of popped up in my sketchbooks in both cases, and the visual of it, like this kid on a farm with the mask and cape and stuff, was striking. And then as soon as you kind of hit, then you start to like ask yourself questions, like you said, like who is this kid? What's his story? And that's where the writing, you start to write the story before you even realize it, right? So you kind of try to give it context, um and then the story just grows pretty quickly out of that.
And then from there, you started drawing a lot of hockey because you'd gotten really back into hockey
Yeah.
and you're reading a lot of the history. So I know that once, like the first book, of course, touches on hockey and it's included in there, but the second book, of course, is focused very much on
Yeah.
hockey and ghost stories. And I know it was a created team, like your fictitious team that you created, but like how much of your hockey history went into, because I know you put it in the 50s, were you taking a lot from the era, what was happening in Toronto at that time?
Not really, to be honest. I think I was just more the general aesthetic of it that I liked, and then it was all just sort of my imagination or my imaginary version of what I imagined that to be like back then. There wasn't like a lot of real hockey history or characters put into it. It was more just capturing a feeling, I guess, an aesthetic more than any literal sort of things. Yeah.
Mm. Now, when was the exact moment that you figured out, oh, if I'm going to continue to tell stories here, I'm going to make this a trilogy. I want all of the families to be connected, like, of course, like it is in rural communities where you have a lineage of family members. When did you decide to make that almost kind of like a mystery part of the story?
Um, I think I had done the first book kind of in as its own thing. You know, I didn't really know it was going to be a trilogy, the Lester story. And then I started doing ghost stories again, kind of as its own thing, because it was and then as soon as I kind of got into ghost stories and realized, well, they're kind of set in the same setting, and you can start to make connections, then the family connection stuff kind of started happening pretty quickly. But really, it wasn't until this idea of a trilogy in 3 books that I started thinking what the third book would be and how to kind of tell the origin story of this place, but also connect all the characters. And so I think I think it was a little more conscious effort by that point of doing exactly what you're saying, trying to weave it all together as sort of like a tapestry in that third book. Yeah. So it was a gradual process across, I guess, all 3 projects.
I was curious, Jeff, when looking at the books, you know, especially for the era that it came out in, right? Like we're talking the 2000s now, to stick with black and white as a choice over, or was it, I don't even know, like if you can answer that, like, is it a choice at that time to stay with black and white versus going to either a grayscale or obviously full color? Was that something that you had decided right from the get-go, or was that more of just a situational thing? Like, you know,
I think it was just like a economical situation. Like
right.
I didn't think I thought I was going to self-publish it. And back then, this was like before the internet and everything, right? So it's like when you're self-publishing, you're literally probably Xeroxing copies, and
Right.
and black and white just was easier to do that with. And you know, color printing would have been so expensive, and I was completely broke. So that, I think it was really just that, you know. And then yeah, so you just, once that's just sort of the parameters you have, you just embrace it and enjoy the qualities of black and white, which are great.
Yeah, would you ever consider doing something like some other creators have done and gone back and colorizing it, or you know, you're happy with
It is
exactly
what
the
it
way it
is
is?
now, and it's yeah. I think that would just be an excuse to sell more books or something, you know, like like it's just for like the completists or something. But yeah, I mean, the story is, it's lived a life, you know, now as what it is. I don't see the need to change it or like go back and remaster it or anything. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
oh, I think it looks great the way it is, so that works. I was just curious because I've seen some others do that, and I always find that interesting. Like, why?
Yeah, well, it's probably like to be blunt, it's probably an excuse to sell the book again to people.
I'll admit I've been taken a couple of times on this. Like, no, it's in color. I was like, oh, I gotta get it. Oh, damn it.
All collectors, we get it.
Yeah,
For it.
yeah, exactly. Now, of course, this series now being brought into a limited series for CBC, and of course, you were heavily involved in the transfer of that as one of the showrunners. And you know, you have a background in film. You went to film school. Was
Mhm.
this like a chance to finally get to pair these 2 mediums together for you, to the things you've learned in both comics and film together?
Yeah, I guess it was. It wasn't. I didn't really intend for that to happen. You know, I mean, when we first started, the development process for the show was very long. I think started developing it as a TV show in 2015 or 16. So, and originally I wasn't attached as the writer or showrunner. I was sort of taking a secondary role. But this story in particular was so personal and kind of my first book where I really found my voice, and I found it really hard to let go of. And so when I came on board to be the showrunner and everything, I just sort of embraced that role, and like you said, kind of uh, tried to put my love of movies and TV and everything into play as well. So yeah, I guess it really was finally the chance to sort of marry those 2 things that I had studied, and yeah.
Yeah, it must be like, it must be strange to see your characters come from a 2D space in black and white to completely three-dimensional, full color, acted by
Yeah.
professionals. You know, like that
And not
was
just
that.
professionals, like an amazing cast
Well,
for
yeah,
this.
for sure. But I'd like, but for you, like, was that like on like with those first few days on set, was that like kind of like, wow, this is you from here to here, like that's a journey.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I tell you, I mean, it's a long process. Everything from casting to location scouting and all that stuff takes so long. And I was so in the trenches on that stuff that by the time you actually get on set and it's all happening so fast, but then there were moments where I really kind of stood back and kind of saw it from the point of view of me 15 years ago. And you know, for some reason, the character of Jimmy and Lester in particular, when those actors were on set as those characters, it really felt like the drawings coming to life in a really cool way. So that was super cool.
Yeah, definitely. A story like this, of course, is something that can lend itself to another medium very easily, you know, like, because again, it's real life. And there's been a number of like graphic novels that are slice of life or, you know, very true historical things like that, that have been adapted into film and television, and people don't even realize that they come from a comic book, because
Sure.
people in their minds think, oh, a comic book movie or TV show has to be based on a superhero or something
Exactly.
horror based or something like that. Is like, it does it surprise you that still, like, decades on, we've had so many television series and comics, television series and movies that have come from much more realistic comics, and people still don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the nature of a medium growing up. I think you know, when I was a kid, when we're probably all roughly the same age, like you know, comics weren't a part of the cultural fabric the way they are now. You know, we could never, none of us could have ever imagined when we were going through those 3-for-1 comic bags that like there'd be, you know, Moon Knight and Vision of Scarlet Witch TV shows, you know, like it's like the most surreal, like what world are we living in, you know? But somehow we are here. And also you go to any bookstore now, any whatever, and there's comics everywhere. You know, kids are reading graphic novels, not just superhero stuff. It's like it's become such a huge part of the culture. But yeah, I think there's still a learning curve with a lot of people who just see comics as Marvel, you know, the Marvel movies or whatever. And that's just, that'll change. It just takes time, you know. And I think it's a compliment a lot in a way too, that the books like Essex or whatever else, that it kind of surprises people that those are based on graphic novels, and kind of opens their eyes in a way to the potential of the medium outside of one genre. So it's all we've come a long way, but you know, obviously there's still a way to go before I think people really embrace comics as like as the medium it is, rather than just one genre.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
I guess that's also just those Marvel movies in particular are so huge that it casts such a shadow that it's hard for people to see beyond it, right? So that's kind of a side effect of that, probably.
Yeah, there's not going to be an end game in Essex County.
There will be, but it's just a hockey game.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, when you read the books, the way you weaved everything together, even though it's much smaller scale, that is your end game. You did a great job of like, it's like, oh, everybody, this is how they're all connected. So, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for talking with us today, Jeff. Really looking forward to the series. Of course, the graphic novel series is available in a collected edition from Top Shelf to this day. People should check it out. It's a great read.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, the show coming to CBC. Really looking forward to people checking it out.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was really fun talking. Yeah.